Hi Bookworms, welcome back to my channel and to another review. Today I'll be talking about The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This book begins with a man finding himself in a forest near a big house with absolutely no memory of who he is. Seconds later, he thinks he witnesses a murder. But this is only the beginning because our protagonist finds himself in a time loop where he has to relive the same day over and over again, the same day, who always ends up in a murder. But this is not just an endless time loop. This is like a ticking clock. He has only a few rounds or loops to witness the day and solve the murder, or else. Wow, the synopsis was hard to write. I wanted to give you enough information to understand what's going on, but I felt like every little bit of too much information will be considered a spoiler. But this book is unique and I loved it. It was so cool, so unique, so refreshing. If you've been watching my last few videos, you know that it's been a while since I've read a really good book, let alone one that I had so much fun reading. So let's do the usual. I told you a little bit about this book. Let's start by talking about the positives before we go to the negatives, because no book is perfect. So, positives first. The genre and the idea were really interesting and unique. Sorry, I've said this word so many times right now. If you know me, you know that I absolutely love whodunit murder mysteries, and this is exactly what this book is. It reminded me of a combination of classic countryside murders and those point-and-click adventure games, which I also love. You got everything here. You got this ancient falling apart house, a family with lots of secrets, a party with plenty of guests. Each one of them has their own agendas, butlers and servants listening behind every shadow, a mystery from 20 years ago. Some might think it's cliche, but I think it's the point. It's all been made on purpose. This book is like a love letter to classic murder mysteries, and I loved it so much. And then of course there is the science fiction time loop element that at first glance seems so out of place and like it doesn't really belong there. But I think that again, these two genres and the way that they are combined together, of course that's all been done on purpose, and they actually match perfectly to make this book so, excuse me for repeating this word, unique. Other things that I like have to do again with the detective genre. This book is complex, and in each time loop we find out more things, more motives, more secrets, etc. There are so many characters, each one of them had their own little character arc, and the time loop enables the author to even more complicate things with each loop, with each round. I loved it, but I can completely understand how some people might feel somewhat frustrated, and it might be a little hard to follow. I think that, again, that was the point, that was on purpose. Basically, if you're a fan of the genre, you will like it. And the last praise has to do with one of the plot twists regarding the rules of the games and the time loops. Don't worry, this video is spoiler free. So I won't reveal what it is, but you have tons of mysteries here, right? You have, first of all, who is the murderer and, why did it happen? But also, why are we in a time loop? Who is really the protagonist? And small things throughout the book. But this plot twist comes up pretty much at the beginning of the book, and I could totally see, even though I haven't seen any other reviews on this book, I would totally understand if some people reviewing this book will actually talk about this thing as part of their synopsis. But as it came up, when it came up pretty much at the beginning of the book, but when it came out, I was so surprised. I had this really cool moment of, oh, that was really clever. And I don't want to ruin the surprise for you. Basically, he did some really interesting, clever things with a kind of a washed-up genre. However, you know that nothing is perfect and every book has its flaws, so let's go over some of them. First of all, it seems small, but it came up throughout the entire book. and that is the protagonist. For the most of the book, he pretends to be someone he's not, and even though he comes in contact and talks to many people who knows personally the person he's impersonating, it never comes up that someone suspects something or something isn't right. And that stretched my suspension of disbelief a little too much. Second, it has to do with the complexity of the book and the plot and the many little tangled timelines and mini mysteries. I am planning definitely on rereading this book. I think this is definitely something that can benefit from a second read. And when I do, knowing the end and the solution to the mystery and everything, I am pretty sure that some things won't add up. I was left with a few questions, but in order to answer them, I would have to kind of go back and find a reference that didn't really make sense to me, and that was impossible in this book. I still think that for the most part, every big question does get answered, but I have a feeling someone as nitpicky as me will find some plot holes, it's kind of inevitable in such a complex narrative, but nonetheless. The last thing that I want to talk about has to do with the characters. The two genres combined are very different, but not only in their style, but also in the way the protagonist plays his part. In classic whodunits, the protagonist doesn't really matter. He's only there as an observer, a tool for us, the readers, to see the plot and the other characters. In a time loop narrative, however, it is very heavily implied that in order to break the circle, the protagonist has to undergo character growth. He has to change the way he thinks and acts in order to get out of the loop, because as we see, he tries again and again and he fails until he changes the way he acts. For example, he keeps maybe thinking logically and making decisions based on logic, but in order to break free, he has to go by his gut feeling. For example, you've seen it in movies probably. And unfortunately, I think this is where the book kind of fails. The protagonist doesn't really undergo any character growth, even though it's kind of implied. The problem is that because of the very unique situation that he's in, the protagonist doesn't really have any personality to begin with, or a character flaw that need to be changed. We don't really see him failing again and again, then realize that he needs to change in order to escape. He is given a clue that something that he does always fails him, but honestly, not only that I didn't really see it in his action, but I didn't even realize what this flaw is exactly and how by changing it, he would escape. This point is especially important toward the ending of the book, so it's not such a huge big deal for the rest of it, but it's still a moment that the book kind of aims towards. It was particularly clear when it came to a different character, and I really felt like the book was kind of pushing us to believe the protagonist will have to change the way he thinks about the other characters, but he doesn't. And I don't really want to go into spoilers, but let's just say it didn't really quite went the way I figured it would. I feel like any other wording or more information will just go into spoiler territory, and I don't want to go there. But however, I still really love this book. It was super fun and interesting, and I love this unique combination between these two unrelated genres that gave a twist to a classic story. And as a huge lover of whodunits, point-and-click adventure computer games, and murder mystery dinner parties that I also write and host, this was the perfect book for me. It does have its flaws, but which book doesn't? This one definitely stays with me until I'm ready to reread it someday in the future. And if you love mysteries and kind of like a classic mysteries, and you feel like reading something new and interesting that still really appreciate and have a lot of respect to the classic genre, I definitely recommend it. But here's my common question for you. If you are interested in reading this book, which aspect of it attracts you? Is it the classic whodunit? Is it the time loop aspect? Is it just generally the combination of two seemingly unrelated genres? Just write down below. And if you have read The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which character was your favorite? Mine was definitely Charles Cunningham. Lord Ravencourt's valet. And that's it for my review, guys. Thank you very much for watching my video. I really hope you like it. If you did, don't forget to click like. Also, share this video, and don't forget also to subscribe to my channel if you dare. I have to tell you, reading this book was so much fun. I really hope that the next book will be just as fun to read, or at least will not disappoint me, but we're just going to have to wait and see. So until then, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.